Hey everybody, I've got something a little bit different for you in this video and the next couple videos. What I'm going to do is break out a whole sharpening kind of a workflow. All right, because what I realized out there is that there's a lot of different ways and a lot of different places to do sharpening. Okay, it even gets confusing when you start looking at all the places that have sharpening. So I wanted to kind of map out for you where we sharpen, when we sharpen, the whole kind of a workflow about it. So let's kick off here inside of Camera Raw because that's where I start my first round of sharpening. Okay, now what we do here is, we can adjust our exposure and we can adjust our white balance and blacks and things like that. And then what we do is we come to the detail tab. Now it doesn't matter when you come to the detail tab, all right? There is no building upon effects in Camera Raw. It's not better to do exposure first and then detail. It's just the way that I do it is I start over here and then go to the detail tab. Okay, it's not like you're working with layers in Photoshop where we say you should do your retouching and then sharpening. Okay, it's a little bit different. So you can come in this tab at any point. The one trick to it is you got to make sure you're zoomed into 100% in order to even be able to see your sharpening. And what you do here is you crank up your amount. Amount is the amount of sharpening. When you look at what sharpening does is it's really looking at the edges of things and it's kind of adding contrast to those edges. Well, the amount slider says how much of that contrast am I going to start to add to those edges. All right, low amounts mean that it's not going to add a lot. High amounts mean that it will add a lot. So let's keep it up high just for sake of argument for now, because we like a sharp image, right? And you can see your preview, just toggle it before and after. All right, so good stuff. Now, radius. Radius says, all right, once I find an edge to sharpen, how far outside of that edge do I go to apply the sharpening effect to? So at a low radius, it's not going to go very far. At a high radius, it starts going even further. Here's where you get into some problems. Let's zoom in. We can get into the haloing situation. All right, take a look at right below her nose here. You can see that little white halo. Let's zoom in a little bit more here. All right, here's before, here's after. See that white halo? As I start bringing the radius down, you'll start to see that go away. And as I start reducing the amount, you'll start to see that white halo go away. So it's kind of both of these things. The radius does definitely make it worse. However, you can't just sharpen the living daylights out of every image and think you're going to get good results even if you have a low radius setting. All right, so you've got to keep those two in check and probably pull one back a little bit. All right, I usually keep the radius right around 1, 1.1, 1.2. Now we come to detail. Detail says, all right, so how many things should this sharpening software go look for to sharpen? At a low setting, it's just going to look for the major details in the photo. At a high setting, it starts to go to look everywhere. And you'll start to see that here. Take a look at some of her skin. Here's before and after. Let's zoom in a little bit more here. Here's before. And then after, you can see we're even coming in here and sharpening the skin, and we're kind of introducing some noise inside of there. So that gets weird. That's why you got to keep this detail setting in check, because you don't want to over sharpen anything. And now we come down here to masking. Masking simply hides away sharpening from those surface areas. So if you do like a lot of sharpening, all right, we have a lot here, before and then after. If you do like a lot of sharpening, take a look here. What masking does is it starts to hide it from the areas where you don't want it to be applied to, from the surface areas, the flat surface areas. Hold down the Option or Alt key and you'll see that the black areas are being, it's kind of spooky, but you'll see that the black areas mean that sharpening is being hidden from those parts. All right, so here's before, here's after of all of our sharpening settings combined. Now, it's important to understand that the sharpening we're doing here is something called capture sharpening. All right, this is sharpening to account for the capture of this photo, all right, which is said in digital to be slightly soft, not really, really soft, but just slightly soft, which means that we need some kind of a capture sharpening. All right, but that is just one step of the process. The way that I tell people here is don't sharpen or don't over sharpen anything here. All right, just sharpen everything to the point where it looks good. Okay, everything looks good in the photo. I haven't over sharpened anything. Again, here's before and then here's after. I think the whole photo in general looks good. So that will lead us into our next process, which I'll cover in the next video, which is called creative sharpen. But just understand that capture sharpening just sharpens the photo to account for the softness in digital capture, and it's just supposed to add that little bit of sharpening to bring everything crisp. All right, and then we'll take a look at the next video where we'll go into some creative sharpening and ways that we can sharpen just parts of the photo.